Buongiorno, everyone. Hello, hello. I am Anna Fishman, and I am your host of Sign Your Own Permission podcast. Today we have an Italian guest, Paola Maggiulli, calling from sunny Puglia. I hope it's sunny, is it?
It was sunny. It was sunny earlier on today. Yes.
Super excited to chat with Paola all about food and giving ourselves permission to pivot. That's the topic of our conversation today. I was super inspired by Paola's chat on a different podcast. So I couldn't hold myself back and I had to reach out to her and say, hey, you need to come on mine and we need to chat about this. So, Paola, thank you so much for joining us today.
No, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. I know you had a door open behind you. So if you want to like, you can go ahead and do
It
it.
was making me laugh inside. I was like, the door was just completely like, yeah, just in case. Yes, but thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to chat with you. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and why is it we're talking about pivoting and permission to pivot?
So my name is, like you said, Paola Maggiulli. You may have realized that I don't actually have a strong Italian accent because I'm actually London bred and born Londoner, but with an Italian father from Puglia. So just to clarify that, if everyone's going, she doesn't sound Italian. I am. I swear to God, my heart is so Italian, but I've just got a very strong London accent. I am an Italian cookery teacher and a self-love champion. So essentially what I do is I love to empower women, help them discover self-love in the kitchen, teach the importance of not just nourishment or prioritizing nourishment, but prioritizing themselves, giving them permission to actually put themselves first. And I think one of the most beautiful ways to do that is to feed and cook yourself delicious food. And I feel like we're coming to a part, we're in a world now where like cooking is starting to like, we're losing the art of cooking. Like people are too busy to cook. And I'm starting to see that when people are cooking less, may end up having like a poor work-life balance. So I'm all about empowering women, teaching them that cooking can be fun, simple, easy, delicious, all the good stuff. But essentially it all comes back to I am worthy. I am worthy, making time for myself, putting myself first, and I want to feel good. So I'm doing this beautiful act of self-care in my own kitchen. So
That's
that
amazing.
is me in a nutshell. I can talk about that in so many different forms, but I try to keep it really brief.
No. This is beautiful. And I think this is very timely. We're chatting in January. No matter when you guys are listening to this in January, July, or December, self-care should always be a priority. But I know now, beginning of
Mm-hmm.
the year, people are making New Year's resolutions, giving themselves permission to exercise more, to eat healthier, to pivot, to do the things that they love to do. And I really hope that this message kind of like sticks with everyone throughout the year and we don't like bail on this by January 31st and like get back to our old ways.
I know. I have to say one of the things I don't believe in new year, new me because I believe in like love yourself as you are, but there's loving yourself, accepting who you are right now, and then wanting to like improve on that or like giving yourself permission to be happier. I think sometimes that message of like new year, new me is like, oh, I'm just terrible. I'm just awful. Like I need to do better. It's like, no, do you know what? Love yourself first. No, you're great. You're beautiful. You're exactly where you're meant to be. But there's always room for improvement. There's always room to make yourself happier. We should never, ever, I don't believe in staying in one place. And I don't mean that geographically, I mean that metaphorically, like in life. We should always be like thinking about moving on. How can I be happy this year? Or what would make me happy this year? What would really bring me joy? So yeah, that whole new year, new me, I think like self-care is something like if you're someone who has embraced it a little bit, but maybe not enough, still love yourself that you've embraced it a little bit. Now it's about, but you've recognized that those moments of self-care made you feel fabulous, but maybe for some reason you weren't giving yourself the permission to do that more often. Give yourself the permission this year to add a couple more days a week and do more self-care. That's how I feel like the new year should be about, because I feel like there's a lot of messages out on the internet that kind of it can be easily these subliminal messages of like you're just not doing enough, and it's like it's not. We've got enough on, we're busy as it is. Women are incredible, we are multitaskers, but sometimes we do forget that we are important as everything else that's going on in life.
Yeah, that's a very powerful message because women, like, we are not enough. That's, I think that we're born with that. We're just like in
Yeah.
our blood, like we're always trying to like get to the more, more, more. And like I'm guilty of that myself. Like every time you reach a certain high or you reach a certain goal, you're like, okay, next, next. So we're like, I
Mm-hmm.
stop enough to reflect back. My husband is really good about that. He's like, stop rushing and like stop like freaking out about the next thing. Stop and look back at how much you have accomplished. I'm like, what do you mean? I didn't accomplish anything. And he's like, no, just like take it all in. So I love that that's your message. And like, it doesn't matter what day of the year it is. We should give, maybe do a little one extra step, but also like give ourselves credit for what we have done so far.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how I feel. And I'm a little bit like you, Anna. I think in the past I have maybe not given myself credit enough for things that I've done. And I've been learning over the last few years. And for example, this is the first January where I don't have 10 million business plan ideas and I don't have like a list as long as my arm. I've actually said this January, do you know what? I had such a crazy 2024 that actually I'm tired, I'm exhausted. So what have I done? I've given myself permission to not like I've been working with I mentioned to you before, I've been working with a company, got a contract. But in terms of my own stuff, rather than panicking and going, oh my God, like I've got this contract, I can't get everything done. I'm like, okay, park it, leave it. It's fine. Give yourself permission. You're doing this one thing because it's going to serve you in one way. And what it's actually done is giving me permission to be like, do you know what, it's going to be okay, rather than going, oh my God, I'm not doing enough. This year's going to be okay. 2025 is over. I've done nothing because, and that's how I would normally be and forget about all the other good stuff I've done. Or like, why did I get to this point? Remember how you got to this point. And it's like that lack of recognition of what we do because we're constantly trying to think of move on the next thing. So I think anyone, if you are listening to this in January, like give yourself permission that you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to do all the resolutions now. Recognize, be grateful for where you are, what you've done. And just like what I think January is a really good time to reflect and
Mhm.
be like, what makes me feel good? What doesn't? Because it is a slower month. Everything slows down, everything's a bit more quiet, no one goes out as much. Like it just feels like a bit of a wind down. So let that energy flow in you. Let yourself wind down, relax, and spend time thinking about it. But you don't have to do it all in January. Like I think everyone thinks, and that I am saying that because I used to be guilty of doing that. And then the amount of pressure I would put on myself would be beyond.
No, I feel you. I want to go back for a second to the theme of today's episode of permission to pivot.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
I've heard your story on a different podcast, and I really connected to it because I can relate to so many pieces of it. But I would love for our audience to hear your story. How did you,
Yes.
like, what did you do with that? Like, why are we talking about it?
How long is this podcast?
We can have it 7 hours long, no problem.
Okay, so as I said before at the beginning of the podcast, I am a Londoner. I didn't just decide one day I was going to move to Italy. There was a bit of a journey before that, and one that I look back now and I'm like, wow, like I can see how it all kind of unfolded. But essentially, like many women, I was in my early 30s, and I was doing all the things that I thought I was meant to be doing. I thought I was meant to be finding myself a husband, and I thought I had to be really successful in my job and working for that promotion and earn more money each year. And I was in this cycle of just, you know, doing all the stuff that I thought I needed to be doing. But I remember at the time, like my dad had a deli. So, for example, my dad has Italian deli, and I just had no interest in it whatsoever. Like anything to do with Italian food or anything to do with Italy just was so like not important to me because again, I was this 30-year-old, need to find a husband, need to get promoted, need to make loads of money. And but I also remember reflecting on that time, just being in this constant state of doing, doing, doing. And I actually look back at photos of myself during that time and I just looked so unhappy. Like I was such an unhappy person from the outside, I come across as quite a big extrovert because I've got quite a big voice and I've got quite a big personality. But honestly, I'm a bit of an introvert. Like I like my own time and everything. But I also remember at the time just thinking I had to be this big person the whole time, and I had to put on this brave face, and I couldn't fall down. I had to keep on going, keep on going. And I just remember, just if I'm being really honest, like I look back now and I was probably suffering from serious mental health issues. Like I was very depressed. And without going into too much detail, and I think that was, a lot of, I mean, there may be women out there that can relate to it, but I had some trauma from when I was younger, also in my early 20s. And back in the day, you weren't told to go and speak to someone to sort it out. You were just kind of dealt with, well, don't worry about it, you're not in that anymore, like move on. And so I was carrying all this hurt and pain for so long. So what I did was just throw myself into work, trying to make loads of money, try and find love. And I was just doing it. I was just managing it all so badly. Like, look at the life. Some of the life choices were just like terrible. And I wasn't taking care of myself. Like I wasn't eating properly. Like I wasn't sleeping. I was drinking 4 or 5 times a week after work. Just
Yeah.
just like, and people go, well, that's what you do in your 20s and your 30s. I'm like, yeah, but if you're happy with that, that's fine. But if you're miserable, like it's a toxic cocktail.
Yeah.
But anyway, my dad decided that he wanted to sell the deli. And I don't know what happened. Like, listen, at this point, I cooked 3 things. I literally cooked like, and I used to live above my dad's deli, so I never used to have to really make anything. Like, I would get given the tomato sauce, I would get given the fresh tortellini, I'd get given the pesto. I didn't have to think. I'd just be like, quick 5 minute dinner, done, I move on. So when my dad decided that he wanted to sell the deli, I was a bit like, I don't know what it was. I cannot, even to this day, I cannot explain what it was. But it was like something in me just was like, what do you mean? What do you mean you're selling it? Well, what does that mean? And my dad's deli was the only thing that connected me to my culture in London, because everything around me was so like British or like all very London. And so the deli closed down, and I realized very quickly that the tomato sauce and the pesto that you would get from a normal supermarket was nothing like the stuff that my dad used to sell. I was like, oh my God, this tastes like shit. It's awful. Like, what is this food? Like, do people eat this? I didn't realize for so long I was actually just given all this good stuff to eat.
Yeah.
Anyway, in a cut a long story short, I ended up just learning to cook myself. Like I started to learn to cook for myself. Like I remember just getting really excited. Like one day I was like, well, I really want spaghetti al pomodoro, but I don't have dad's sauce. So I'm going to have to learn how to make a spaghetti al pomodoro. And I got a good tin of tomatoes, and I found a recipe, and I was like, let's do this. And I made this spaghetti al pomodoro. I sat down. I wasn't sat down in front of the TV. I was actually like sat down at a table, and I was like, and I was like, oh my God, this is really, really good. And I will never forget, that's one thing I never forget. I never forget the happiness I felt at that one moment when I had created this bowl of pasta and tomato. And not only did it taste good, but I just felt so happy because it reminded me of all my summers with my nonna, with my zias, and going, I don't have to be in Italy to eat this good. I don't need my dad to eat this good. I can do this myself. And I can't explain it. But then the following day, I was like, okay, I'm not going to go to the pub after work. I'm going to go to Waitrose. Waitrose is a supermarket in the UK. I'm going to learn how to make something else. I can't remember. I think it was pesto. Like, how do I make a pesto?
Yeah.
And that was just literally how my life changed. Because not because I learned to cook, because I learned how cooking for myself was a form of self-love. For once in my life, I wasn't working 12 hours in the office and staying late and locking up in the office. I wasn't staying late with my friends getting drunk because that's what I thought I should be doing, or because I couldn't be bothered to like cook or, whatever. I wasn't like, I thought like I was beyond cooking because, I was a working girl working really hard, like trying to make it in fashion. Like I didn't have time to cook, and started to realize that I'd been denying all these things that were actually really good for me. So I was just cooking more, cooking more. I started my blog, The Tiny Italian. That's actually the name of my Instagram account now. The Tiny Italian, I've realized, has been around for 14 years, which I'm so proud of. But it started off as a website. I created this website for myself, accountability. So I would learn these recipes and then put them on a website so that it would be, I would make myself accountable, like a way of keeping up with this whole cooking thing. And I didn't realize that people were actually using my website. And over the time, brands would contact me, the Italian embassy in London were contacting me. Over the years, I became a bit of a name when blogging and Instagram was starting out. Like this, oh, there's this Italian girl. There's a London girl who loves Italian food, and I just made it all look really accessible and fun. So in 2018, I felt like so that happened in 2011. 2018, I remember I recognized feelings of not being happy again. And I was like, okay, I need to really figure out, like, why am I feeling this way again? Because I felt like I had realized like what self-love was, and I just thought the cooking myself gorgeous meals was enough. And I made this decision. I found myself, I was actually in a really awful, toxic relationship. At 38, I thought I had to hold on to this relationship because I didn't think I was going to meet anyone again. And I realized that the relationship was actually probably one of the most unhealthiest relationships I had ever been in my entire life. And got rid of that, or him, should I say, got rid of him. And then I remember just also going, that's not enough. I'm back where I was, in 2011. I'm back at a corporate job. I'm trying to keep a business happy. I'm making millions for this company. I'm working really hard. And yes, I have much better self-care habits, but I'm still not really doing what I really, really want. And the Tiny Italian was starting to kind of like get a real name for itself. And I had done I wanted to get my chef's qualification. So I couldn't do the full-time one. So I would actually, after work, I would go to culinary school, and I would go and get my diploma. I was really passionate about I really wanted to be a really good cook. So I remember at the time finding ways of like fitting it into my life. And it did mean a lot of sacrifice. But then, like I said, it highlighted that I wasn't with a supportive partner. And actually, I realized, I said, if the Tiny Italian's doing so well and I'm doing like I'm not really putting that much effort into it, why don't I give it a go? You only live once. So I left my boyfriend at 38 years old. I quit a 7-year career at like an amazing global retailer, like fashion retailer. And I I remember going into my boss's office. I hadn't even thought about leaving. It just really annoyed me the day before, and I had an appraisal, and I remember like thinking, oh, I've got an appraisal. What am I going to praise? Another year of like the same crap? Like, I don't want to do this. So when he thought, you go, right, so let's look at, so have you filled in your appraisals? Like, I don't know if there's any point me filling in the appraisal. He said, why? I said, because I'm going to leave. And he was so shocked. He was like, are you sure? And I was like, I'm not happy. Like, this life isn't meant for me. Like, I feel like I've tried to convince myself that this is what I should be doing, but there's something inside of me. It's like, I'm so passionate about food. I'm so passionate about cooking. I need to go away and like explore that. So I then left my job in August 2018, and I went traveling all around Italy by myself and a suitcase for 6 months on the trains. The trains are like in Italy, like the trains are mad. And I did that for 6 months. I went to every major city in Italy, and I wanted to not only learn about every single dish, but I wanted to also learn like how do Italians deal with everyday life. I didn't want to go to a small village. I didn't think that was going to really help me. I need to see how people were eating and living in Rome, Florence, Milan, Genoa, people that like me are born and bred from a city. But all I kept on seeing was like people slowing down, people taking time to eat, people enjoying their meals, savoring their meals, loving that glass of wine, meeting up with friends for an aperitivo. Like it wasn't binge drinking. It was like, it was like just. And so I traveled all around Italy for 6 months, like learned so much. And I also learned a lot about myself. It was my first ever solo trip that I was on my own traveling and just like learn more about who I was as a human being and what I was actually capable of. And I just don't think I gave myself enough credit because, you know, now I'm thinking like, would I go traveling for 6 months on my own around Italy? I don't know if I would do it now anymore. I think just then it was something that I really needed to do. Like I'd probably do it now, but in a different way. I
Yeah.
do it a lot more luxury and bougie because I deserve that now.
Right, you do, absolutely. You'll come with us and you'll travel with us, our bougie group.
And so I did that, and then so over the years, but what I ended up doing was it was first very much like Italian food, like teaching people about Italian food, teaching about, like Anna, like Italian food doesn't exist, but Tuscan food does, like food from Lazio does, Pugliese food exists. So I was really passionate about teaching people that. And then lockdown happened. So a year and a half in being freelance, the world decided to close down. And I was like, holy crap, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? At this point, I'd done 2 classes in real life at this point. And the year before lockdown, I was doing lots of supper clubs. And I genuinely thought, maybe that's what I'm going to do, like be more of a supper club queen. Because I love the idea of getting people together and all that sort of stuff. But when I was teaching, I remember the feeling I had of like teaching people. Like people that love to cook, obviously it's a joy to cook for them, but I get more pleasure teaching people to cook who don't think they can cook. Like I love seeing how their energy changes, how their confidence grows. And so like I knew that I could teach. I've gotten some feedback. There was a couple of people that I taught before lockdown that were like, I'm a terrible cook. Like, can you help me? I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, first of all, it's not that deep. So chill. Like you can cook. Someone's told you, or somewhere along the line, someone's made you believe you can't cook. You can cook. Because if I can cook, anyone can cook. Trust me. Like, because it's not about techniques. You can learn techniques, but what I realized the most important thing is cooking with your soul, with love, with intention, with patience, with love. Like that's what it is. So during lockdown, I found that it was actually a great success was teaching people around the world to cook. But rather than cooking people one-on-one, I was creating the Italian concept of like food brings people together. So it would be like getting friends and families would organize cooking parties with me or big corporate companies to kind of connect. But again, it wasn't just a normal, like, I'm going to teach you how to make a risotto or I'm going to teach you how to make a ragu. There were disco tunes, there was a vibe, because again, cooking is not that deep. It's not that serious, especially home cooking. Now, if you want to go and work in a Michelin star restaurant, if you want to open up a restaurant, then sure, sure.
Yeah.
But when you're cooking for yourself at home, like it needs to be a vibe. So then I did that. But then again, I think, like I said before, while I did that for like a year and a half and it was really successful. I cooked, I worked for Amazon, Google, like did it all. Like I ended up also interviewing my all-time favorite chef, Giorgio Locatelli. I don't know if you've heard of Giorgio Locatelli. He
Wow.
does MasterChef in Italy now. He's got a Michelin star restaurant in London. Actually, it's just recently closed down, but I ended up even working with him during lockdown. It was while the rest of the world was like struggling, I was having the time of my life. I was like, this is exactly where I want to be. Like I'd gone from being this businesswoman in fashion to, teaching twice a day during lockdown. I just, it was incredible. But what I loved, again, like I said, it wasn't teaching the people that were like, oh, I love Italian food. I already know how to cook. I just love cooking. I'm like, yeah, you're cool. I'm so glad you're here. But where's the person? I'd be like, right, who here doesn't like to cook? Admit it. Who's been forced to come here today? Okay, I'm watching you. You're mine. By the end of the hour, your whole idea, your whole concept of cooking is going to change. And seeing those people going, oh my God, did I just make that? And I went, yeah, that was you. I'm your guide. And that's what I always say. Again, there are teachers out there that are like, you have to do it like this. I don't believe that. Cooking should come from within, should become through this, it comes from the soul. It's a confidence boosting thing. So to see people, you know, change their mood, their confidence, their mindset around cooking was great. But then something else happened. You know, I kind of pivoted a little bit again because I was like, it's cool teaching people about Italian food, but I want to teach people about how Italians live, like the dolce vita. Like the dolce vita is so beautiful, you know, the sweetness of doing nothing. And it doesn't literally mean not doing nothing, but it's about finding joy in the most simplest of moments. So my whole cooking, my whole business has now, you know, I've given myself permission to do something. I was a bit worried. I was a bit like, I'm doing this Italian food thing constantly. Like, I'm doing so well. Why should I change again? I was like, because I know that how cooking not only meant that I started to eat better, but cooking actually showed me like I am worth it. I am worth making time for. And I actually realized that with some of my clients that I've worked with over the years, some of them have struggled with mental health. They have struggled with depression. And they use cooking as a form of taking care of themselves, but also bringing positivity. Like someone said to me last night, every time I do one of your classes, I just feel lighter. And I'm like, that's what I want to do. And I feel like, you know, I want how I have, I mean, I've pivoted quite hard to the point where not only do I have this whole self-love concept and I teach women to cook for like confidence and empowerment, but then even after lockdown, and this is, and you're probably wondering like, where, how did you get to Italy? I'm getting to that.
No, what I'm wondering, I'm like, finally, I found someone who can talk more than I talk, so that I can just sit and relax for a few minutes.
Oh my God, you should interject because I don't stop. I don't breathe. I just talk,
I
I
love
talk and
it. I
talk.
love it. Go for it. You know, one of the few most often comments that I get on the podcast, she's like, people tell me, the girls, the women, they're like, Anna, you need to talk less. We want to hear the guests, so please talk. I
So
love it.
anyway, I had like a really good successful lockdown. But then by the end of lockdown, you know, I have to say the business completely disappeared. No one wanted any more online classes. No, and I have to say that that feeling crept back in, your failure. You're not worthy of anything. Look, it was a short, you know, you're not that lucky. You should never have thought it was going to be like this forever. And honestly, it hit hard. Like it hit my ego, it hit my bank account. Um, and to the point where I was so stressed, this was at the end of 2022. I remember just feeling like, why did I leave my job? Like just regretting everything and everything and everything. And I remember speaking to my family and they're like, what's stressing you out? And I was like, I can't, I'm a single woman. I'm 40, what was this? I'm 42. Like I can't pay my bills. Like, and I, you know, in my previous career gave me the, you know, gave me the privilege to buy an apartment in London. But on my new business, it doesn't make as much money as my other business, but it pays me in love and fulfillment. So I had to make this decision. It was like to keep my flat, to keep my apartment in London, what do I need to do? Do I go back to fashion where I know I can make a packet and let the tiny Italian disappear? Or do I sell the apartment and just carry on with the tiny Italian because I can see how it changes lives, but you don't know where you're going to end up? It's an unknown future. And I chose the latter. I sold my flat that I had for 10 years, my bachelorette pad that I loved so much. I waved goodbye. I never thought I would ever leave London. I thought I was a London girl through and through. I was like, I'm never leaving London. I'm dying. I'm here to the last day. You know, that was me. That was me. And 8 months later, I started looking for a place in Italy. I remember spending the summer of 2023. I was still living with my parents. I told them it was only going to be for 3 months. The garage was full of all my things. My parents were like, where are you going to live? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where I can afford. I don't know. I don't know what to do. Like I tried to buy other places and other places in the UK, but it just wasn't working. And that summer in 2023, I decided to take time off my own business and just have like me time. Embrace the food, embrace the slower pace, embrace the sense of community by all the amazing Italians. Learn from them how they live their life. And I remember like it was a week before I was having to, it was like 2 weeks before I had to go back to London. And I was with one of my Italian friends. I have this amazing friend out here called Patrizia. She's a real force of nature. I was like, oh, Patty, I don't know where I'm going to live when I go back. I'm gonna have to find somewhere to live because I can't live with my parents at 42 years old. I can't live with my parents anymore.
Yeah.
She was like, Paola, perché non trovo una casa a Lecce? Why don't you find a house at Lecce? And I was like, no, I can't afford Lecce. And if anyone has seen pictures of Lecce, Lecce is stunning. And I was like, I can't afford Lecce. She's like, have you checked the prices? I was like, no. She's like, well, then don't make the assumption. So I looked at the prices. I was like, oh, I can afford Lecce. I can afford Lecce and I can have financial freedom for the first time in my life. I can buy somewhere and not have to worry about paying the mortgage.
Amazing.
And it took me a year. No, it took me, so I decided in August 2023. I decided in, no, hold on, it was end of 2021 that I decided to move out of my flat in London, sold the flat in March 2022, decided to move to Lecce in the summer of 2022, found it in April 2023, and moved in September 2023. So in essence, in a space of a year, of deciding and also still living in London. So I was flying back and forth constantly. I even flew straight directly from New York because the place that I live in now had come up, and friends of mine who were kind enough to go and see it for me was like, Paola, you need to come and see this place quick. So I ended up just moving to Lecce. And it's the best decision I have ever made for myself. I had just wasn't worried about what am I going to do for a job? What I'm like, I don't care. Can we stop? Like, even my parents were like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, can we just not worry about what I'm going to do? Can we just be like happy and like, can we just embrace this craziness that I'm about to embark on? Because it feels so good because anytime in my life I have pivoted, done things, it has always just made me happier. And this has made me happier. And now I live in Lecce. I don't live in the middle of the city centre, but I'm a 10-minute walk. And that to me suits me fine. And I live on a really busy road. And it reminds me that I'm living back in London again. So again, it's all good. But I don't think I could have done that without the amount of love that I was pouring back into myself every single day, the belief in myself every single day. Like when worries would turn, I mean, there were days when I was like, what am I doing? I'm absolutely crazy. What am I doing? But then I say, okay, but why? But where would you rather be? Where you were or where you're going to? And it's always like, I'd just rather be where I'm going to. I don't want to go back to where I've been.
Right.
So that's kind of my story. I don't know if that's exactly the same story that I did on the other podcast. I can't remember because it always depends on like
Right.
where I'm at in that time. But yeah, that's my story and
No,
how I
it's
got here.
amazing. It's incredible. It's super inspirational. I can relate to so many things coming from 10 years in corporate and graduate degree and working in Manhattan and everything and being super miserable and being super depressed and not loving any of that. And you found yourself in cooking. I found myself in travel. Like, because that's where I was called, like I had my calling in travel and I opened the computer.
Mm.
Like, how do you start a travel business with zero experience in doing anything in travel business? I knew business, I knew travel. I didn't know travel business.
Yeah.
But it takes so much guts. It takes so much actual knowing yourself and understanding yourself that you're not happy to make that change. Because unfortunately, I see so many people, young and old and in between, who are like not happy with their lives, but they continue being not happy for 20, 30, 50 years. They don't do anything about it. They don't give
Mm.
themselves the permission to do something because they're like, well, that's what I went to school for. That's where I'm gonna work, and that's what I need to do. And what do you mean I'm gonna like change and uproot and break up with a boyfriend? And oh, like we don't give ourselves, especially as women, we don't give ourselves permission to follow our heart. And like now, like listening to your story and like remembering my own story, like people thought I was crazy too when I was in my 30s and I was like, okay, I'm done with my corporate job of 10 years. I'm gonna become a travel agent. They're like, are you crazy? Have you heard of internet? Like, what are you talking about? What's wrong with you? But I
Mm.
was miserable. I was crying every Sunday night. I hated my job. People were like, you're so negative. But I'm like, I'm not a negative person. I became the negative Anna in corporate because I hated my everyday. And like, I never, like, if somebody told me now, almost 10 years later, since I started my travel business, that I will be taking groups of women to Italy on food experiences and amazing, authentic travels, I'll be like, what are you smoking? I work in corporate and I sell advertising.
Yeah.
Who is this person? So it's so amazing that like both of us, and like I will pat myself on the back and I will pat you virtually on the back for realizing that need, realizing we're not happy, and giving ourselves permission to make that pivot. Because we're probably like few in the million of others who don't give us
Mm.
permission to do that.
I think it's because people don't give themselves the time. It's like you can, I think if you give yourself the time to reflect on how you're feeling, that's one thing. And then it's about giving yourself permission to do something about it and not being scared of making a change. And I think, I see it too. I see it so often now, like people's life, it's a routine. You know exactly what you're doing every day, you know exactly where you're going to be. You're just in automatic mode, and that feels easier.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that feels easier. But have you actually stopped and asked yourself, am I truly happy? And maybe some people that are listening to us go, yeah, I am. I love my life. I love it exactly how it is. But if you are guilty of what I used to do, which is like numb any feeling, I would literally numb any sort of lack of self-worth, like the negative talk. Like I was just like, I knew in myself, I just didn't love myself enough, but I would like numb it. Like I would want that feeling to go away. So that's when I would work long nights. I would drink a lot, with I wasn't alcoholic or anything, but you know what it's like. You go out and you just drink after work, and it would just be like that would be like 4 or 5 times a week. And you'd wake up feeling like shit the next day. And it's like this cycle of like, and it was like I said, it was like my dad selling his deli. It was weird. Like, how did my dad selling the deli change my life? What it did, because my routine had broken up.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to live above the deli anymore. I wasn't going to get the food from there anymore. So I had to think like, what does this mean for me? What does that, and I think, sometimes it takes something come along to kind of like hit you like a
Right.
bus for you
Same
to
thing
realize that
happened.
something's got to change.
A similar hit me with the like hit you in the face happened to me because I had my son, my first baby, in May, almost 10 years ago, and I spent the whole summer with him at home on maternity. I had some challenges with the giving birth, so like it was very traumatic experience for me. But then I realized that, oh my God, I have this beautiful summer with my child, and I have to go back to work, and I will never have a summer like this at home again. I'll go back to corporate. I'll have 2 weeks in America. We have 2 weeks of vacation time.
Yeah, no, it's mad, mad. They do
And I
that
was
here as
like,
well.
so I went back to work and I was so depressed because I would leave at 6 o'clock in the morning. I live in New Jersey. I worked in Manhattan. So like 2 hours on the train one way, 2 hours on the train back. I leave at 6 a.m. It's dark. My baby's sleeping. I come home at 8 p.m. It's dark. My baby's sleeping. And I tell my husband, I spend 4 hours a day on the public transportation. And like, I don't see my kid at all. Does he even know I'm his mom? Like,
Mm,
that was like my pivoting point. I'm like, I don't want to live like that. I don't care about that career. I don't care about that job. I don't care about that money. Like, I'm not happy. I want to see my child. And when I
mm,
finally had the guts, like you went into your boss's office and said you're quitting, I had a similar experience. I was sitting with my boss having my annual like end of the year review, and she was telling me about all these things I'm going to work on next year, and I'm thinking to myself, oh hell no. I'm not working on any of this stuff. I was so mentally checked out. I almost like I had a panic attack. I saw myself like my soul separate from my body, and I was looking at this interaction between these two people like from a corner of the room, and I'm like, this is creepy. Like I'm not doing any of this. I came home and had the scariest revelation. I told my husband I'm quitting my job. Like this was scarier than anything else I've done in my
Mm.
life. And thank God that he was so supportive. And he
So
said,
important. Yeah.
do that, because he could have said like, are you mad, like go back to
Mm.
work, we have a child, we have a mortgage and everything. No, he was like, you can do this. And I was like, really, you think me sending strangers overseas for lots of money is a good idea? He's like, yeah, you can do this. So he had more faith in me than I had, but
Mm.
something had to change because I was miserable like you were miserable. And
Mm.
I recognized it a long time ago, but I just didn't give myself permission to do anything about that until life smacked me in the face. I had a baby who spent 3 days in the neonatal unit, and I didn't know if he's gonna survive or not. And your whole life flashes in front of you. And I'm like, why the F am I doing any of this when life is
Mm.
fragile and short? Like, I would rather do this travel thing, which at that point it was a travel thing. I had no idea what I'm gonna do. Rather do this travel thing, fail miserably, and then go back to whatever corporate. But at least I'm gonna tell myself I tried. I'm
Yeah,
not
exactly.
I'm not sitting on
Exactly.
my deathbed being like, I so wish that when I was 30 years old, I took that chance and I never did. And then I'm like miserable for the rest of my life. No.
I think there's also this idea with women. I don't see it so much in men, but I see it in women that, the fear of failing.
Yeah.
So people, I just see a lot of women like because we have this perfectionism in us.
Hmm.
For some of us, and it's like because our role has changed society so much in the last 50 years that we're not just housewives, we're not just mothers, we are actually capable of doing a lot. And I think, innately in us, I think we want to do everything really, really well, but sometimes that can lead to perfectionism. And what perfectionism does, and something that I've struggled with, is like it stops you from actually doing something because you're scared of failing.
Yeah.
So you're like, I don't want to do that. So, because in case I get it wrong. But I think loving yourself, the true form of self-love is giving yourself permission to fail. Say to yourself, I'm going to do this, and it's okay if it doesn't work out, but I got to try.
Yeah.
I got to try. Because then, like you say, you don't want to be on a deathbed one day and go, I wish I had just done that one thing. Like at the moment, I'm learning to drive. Oh, I haven't learned to drive. I need to drive in Italy. I need to drive in Italy. And I haven't driven for 25 years because you don't. Living in London, you don't have to drive.
Yeah.
And I've had to, this is my one thing. It's like I'm scared of not being able to drive in Italy. And I've been even the first 2 weeks of January, I was meant to call the guy on the 7th of January, and I just didn't do it. And I could sense it creeping back in. And then this week I was like, get over yourself. If you don't learn to drive, you are never going to be able to drive to all the beautiful places you want to visit, go and meet all the beautiful people you want to meet. Start driving. And even if I have to take 20 million lessons, take 20 million lessons rather than being scared that something's going to go wrong. Because driving is like the only thing in life that I'm actually scared of. But yeah, if I could tell you what I was feeling, it was the feeling, what was holding me back was like, I'm not going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
I can't do it. And like when you realize you have to, I don't think enough of us actually listen to ourselves enough. And it's not, there's two parts of there's your gut, there's your soul, there's your gut, and then there's this. And I just sometimes think this takes over too much, and what we really need to is lead with this.
This
So I think that's why
negative self-talk, constantly sabotaging ourselves.
self-sabotage all the time. Yeah, no, it's horrible. It's really horrible. But again, it's because, again, in society, we are held to a certain standard that I don't think men are held to the same standard that we are. And so it's something that's, I've had to do a lot of work. And, I'm 44, not married, no children, but I have created a life that I love. Do I want to meet someone? Hell yes, I want to meet someone. But am I comfortable being single? Yes, I am being comfortable being single too. I love being single. I enjoy it. But I'm not, and this is not just relationships, but also just with people that I bring into my life. They have to, what I've created is so wonderful that anyone that comes into my life has to add to that, not disrupt it.
Yeah.
That's how I look at it. So for me, it's like, and that's with anything like, yeah, I'm talking about, initially I said, I'm single, but with even people that I choose to come in, I'm like, if you want to disrupt my life and cause me hell, then you could just stay away. Like I don't need you. I don't need drama. I've had enough drama in my life. I'm quite happy to live a peaceful life right now.
Now, on a little tangent, ladies, if you're watching, if you have sons, nephews, grandsons, let's find Paola a husband. He's gonna be well fed. He's gonna have a
Yes.
have a fun life. Like we can make this happen. The world is our oyster. There's so many men out there. We can find someone amazing for you. Let's do
And
this.
as long as he doesn't mind me wearing leopard print every day because I wear it every day. So it's like as long as he's cool with that, then we're fine. We're all good.
My husband proposed to me while I was wearing a leopard print bathrobe. Okay,
Oh
so
my God.
there, there are there is you will find your soulmate at the right time and the right.
That's exactly how I say. It's he's there. It's just the time isn't right. It's just or it hasn't been right.
Yeah,
Like I always say to everyone, your life can change in seconds. Like he could knock on my door right now with a letter. Anything. So that's I never this is, but I like to think when I look at how I've evolved, in my 30s, like I had to find him. I had to find him. And I ended up with just absolute idiots because I was just trying to,
yeah,
but there was a lot of lack of self-worth for me. So for me, it's like I've had to learn to really love myself. And now I feel like I'm at a point in my life that, I'm glad I didn't meet him because of the best relationship I've ever had in my entire life that has really proven the most important one is the relationship with myself.
yeah.
So
Oh,
yeah, yeah,
that's
it's
amazing.
all good. I'm excited. I'm excited for the rest of my life has to offer. And being in Puglia is definitely part of that journey. Like it's absolutely beautiful. It's beautiful down here. It's really, really beautiful. It's a beautiful region of Italy. And, my dad is from here, so I've known it my whole life. But my previous experience was like coming every summer, going to the beach.
Yeah.
And what I've realized now, actually, there's so much to Puglia than just beautiful beaches and sea. It's full of culture and creativity and love. And obviously, the food is
Ah,
amazing.
good.
People are beautiful to look at in the sense of like, everyone is just like, got this level of just like oozing, just like confidence and just, it's just the most beautiful place. It's the most beautiful place.
Like I've been to Puglia twice and like listening to you, like I'm reliving all these memories in my head. Like I want to go again. It is beautiful. It's so different from other parts of Italy. Like
Yeah,
Italy
it
is
really
so
is.
diverse. People like, what crushes my soul? People tell me, I've been to Italy. I'm like, where have you been? Rome, Venice, Florence. I'm like, no, you have
No,
not been to Italy, please.
no,
You have not
no,
been
no,
to Italy.
no.
But Puglia is very special. For those who don't know where Puglia is, I always explain like if you look at the Italian boot on the map, it's the heel of the boot.
Mhm.
And our tour that we bring women on the foodie experience, which naturally became a foodie experience. It wasn't planned to be a foodie experience,
I
but
feel like it can only be a food experience if you're in Puglia because
it became
everything just surrounds around food.
oh my
Everything.
God. We had one day at the beginning of our tours where like we usually have one food experience every day on a tour. So it's either wine tasting with lunch or cheese tasting with lunch. But once we had an experience where it was supposed to rain on that day when we were supposed to have a picnic on the beach. And I really loved that experience. So we had to like reshuffle things. So our first day with this group, we just got to Italy the night before. We started with the breakfast at the Masseria, which you know how breakfasts are like 12
Beautiful.
tiers of like cheese and eggs and pastries and fruit and yogurt and da 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 da. Then we finished the breakfast. We had like a 30-minute drive to cheese tasting. And it wasn't like a few pieces of cheese. It was like this whole spread of like all the cheeses that they had with all the appetizers, with all the wines. We're like, oh my God, we just had breakfast. Okay, so we have the cheese tasting. Then we had an hour walking tour and we went
Love that.
to, to lunch at a winery that we had like lots of wine tasting and more appetite, like more food. People are like, this is the third meal. It's only like 12 o'clock. We finished wine tasting. We had like maybe about an hour walking tour in a different place. And then we went to the beach to have that picnic because if we were not going to have it that day, we would not have it at all because of the weather constraints. So we had a picnic with more food and more wine. People are like, oh my, and after picnic we had a dinner schedule.
Went dinner. Yeah. I mean, I'm not surprised. I mean,
And people are like, are you serious? I was like, well, this was like the picnic was not supposed to be like in this schedule, but the rest of the food, yeah. And then we still have like some kind of a food experience every day after. I'm like, I have to rename this tour as a foodie tour. There's so much food that like it cannot be not a foodie tour. And I love food. If you can tell by my sweatshirt, I have to get up and show you pasta, vino, amore. Like
yeah.
this is my favorite sweatshirt, and we're talking about food. I'm like, I thought this was very timely to wear. Like you like wearing prints, leopard prints. I love wearing obnoxious sweatshirts and t-shirts. But let's go back to the topic of food. What are some of the most delicious things in Puglia that people get to try when they visit?
Oh, well, again, it depends on like which part of Puglia. One of the things I love are bombette. And we had bombette,
Yeah.
which is like the thinly sliced meat, thinly sliced pork, and then it's stuffed with like parmesan, breadcrumbs, parsley, rolled back over again, um, coated in lightly coated in breadcrumbs, and then like, grilled or like barbecued. But then you can get all different types of bombette. There's a place somewhere in Puglia, it's called, I think it's called a La Bombetta, and you can literally, there's about 20
Mm.
different flavors. Then you've got things like la focaccia barese, the big focaccia with a tomato on top. It's like, could anything could be more beautiful? It's like sunshine. It looks like sunshine. That's how I describe it. It's
I
just
just
like,
got goosebumps think like remembering the taste of them,
yeah.
eating it in
Oh,
Bari on the
just
street with the
so
oil dripping down our elbows, but it was so good. It was so good.
so good, so good. And then like in Lecce, we have this thing called rustico, which is it's like a street food snack. It's like it's puff pastry and it's stuffed with tomatoes, bechamel, mozzarella. That's delicious. The pasticciotto, which is the cream, the pastry filled with patisserie cream. That's delicious. And you've obviously got to have orecchiette and macaroni, the pasta shapes with like a nice tomato sauce or like a ragu. But again, in Salento, where I'm from in Lecce, we have something called saccia nucalata. So they have their own dialect down here, and it's basically really long pasta that has been twisted,
Okay.
and it's fresh pasta. If you've never had it before, you need it in your life. It's very typical from where I am in Lecce. Because everyone orders orecchiette and macaroni. I'm telling you now, if you go to Puglia, go to Lecce, ask for lasagne nucalate. They are just like, and you go to like, and the people that still make it, they roll it out and they twist it like this long, thin twist. Beautiful. What else? Bombette. Yeah, I feel like I've covered I mean, there's so many things. Like that's the thing. Like then you've got the real traditional cucina povera. So pane fritto. So it's like bread that's fried, but it's been mixed in with vegetables. That's very typical of here. God, honestly, it's just like there's just
So
you
much.
can literally eat, and then you go to the coast, and then you've got all the seafood, and there's just like there's so much variety. So when people say to me like Italian food is just pizza and pasta, I'm like, you need to go and get an education because it's not. Okay, it's really not. You have pizzas like what you eat here as like if you're going to go out for dinner and treat yourself to like a snack, you get yourself a pizza. And yes, people do tend to eat a lot of pasta, but they don't eat the portions that people think. Like you're meant to eat like 80 grams, 60, 80 grams. And then you have your secondo, so you have your meat, your fish, your vegetables. Like everything is about balance. I don't believe in diets. I do not believe in diets. I believe in the Mediterranean diet, which is just all about balance. I said I don't believe diets, and I said the Mediterranean diet, but the Mediterranean diet isn't a diet; it's a lifestyle. It's all about balance. It's all about just not demonizing food.
Yeah.
Just don't demonize it. I'm all about as long as my food is unprocessed and it's fresh, I'm already winning. Because there's so much processed food in the world now. It's like it's terrible. But Italians are very good. Like I believe in the UK, I think I feel like in the States it's even higher. the average amount of processed food, the average intake of processed food for an American, I think is 75%. In the UK, it's 60%. The average intake of processed food in Italy is 15%. So it's like it's so much less because they still hold a lot of the culturally, and
Yeah.
it's very much supported by government as well, to hold on to the traditions of Italian food and agriculture. And like things like Parmigiano Reggiano, balsamic vinegar, certain wines all have PDO. You've
Mhm.
noticed that they have to be
Yeah.
made in a certain region, use a certain process. So that you're eating the best stuff possible. Like you're just not eating rubbish. So
Oh
if you
yeah.
come to Puglia, it doesn't matter where you eat in Puglia, you're going to eat well. Honestly, just stay away from anywhere that I don't know. I'm just like you can. I always think the best places are the best places that aren't shouting about coming into them.
Yeah.
The best places are the ones that are just quietly. You think, oh, what's going on in there? It looks a bit odd. You have the best meal of your life. The fancier places I stay away from. I like going to like the places that look a little bit suspect because you always eat better in there.
I always tell my clients when they go to Italy, if you see a menu outside of the restaurant in like three languages, stay away. Like you don't
Yeah,
want to go.
yeah, that's what I'm always like. Just don't go anywhere where they've translated into every language. Like just no. They're cooking for you, but not in the right way. You
Yeah.
want to eat where the locals eat. So yeah.
The freshness of food in Italy, like I believe what you said about 75% of food in America is processed. I think I read somewhere there is a list of 150 plus ingredients that are banned in Europe but are okay in America to add to food. The food that we eat here is just trash. It's all either modified or it's grown with antibiotics or it's grown in like artificial ways. I will never forget when my son had tomatoes in Europe for the first time and he's like, what is this? Why are they sweet? I'm like, that's what they're supposed to taste like. He was 7 or 8. And he eats like Greek salad every day that he loves it. That's the only like cucumber tomatoes are the only like vegetables that he really likes to eat. So I
Mm.
make it for him every day. I probably spend like $50 a week just on cucumber and tomatoes that taste like nothing, like taste like grass. And when he had the cucumber tomato salad in Europe, I think we were in Greece, and he was like, "Oh my God, this is like I've never. It's so sweet. Like, Mom, what's wrong?" But I'm like, "Nothing wrong with our tomatoes are wrong. This is not wrong. Just like the taste of. I'll never forget how I had. I don't know if you had this experience. We had Fornello dinner. Have you tried Fornello yet in Puglia? So there is. I think it's called
No.
Cisternino. Cisternino. I'm not sure how to pronounce.
Ah, Cisternino. Hold on, no, Fornello. So I've eaten a lot of places. Do I remember what they're called? No. So I could have eaten there. I've been to Cisternino and I've eaten. Is it the place that? Oh,
The
it's like
whole
it's
the whole town is a butcher town. So like every
yeah, Cisternino. Yeah, I've been to Cisternino before. Yeah,
So like
it's
we
amazing.
that was such an interesting experience where you come to the butcher shop and you see all these like fresh cuts of meat and you're like, I want this piece, and that piece, and
Hmm.
grill it in the back for you. They just put a little bit of salt and bring it out. And I'm like, that's gonna taste like shit because they didn't marinate it. They just put a little bit of salt. Like when I make a steak at home, I have to marinate it overnight because our meat tastes like nothing, so it has to absorb all the spices. Oh my God, they brought this meat. I was like, I didn't know that
You're making me hungry.
because the meat should have had taste of meat. I'm like, I didn't know meat. It doesn't taste like grass. Like it actually has a taste of meat. So fresh, so incredible. Like, and my very favorite thing in Pule is burrata. I can like
Oh yeah, burrata.
I can eat
Yeah.
burrata every day, all day. Burrata and a piece of focaccia. I remember we arrived in our masseria really, really late because I had the genius idea of flying into Naples and then taking a cart to all the way to Ostuni, like I don't know, 5 hours later at 11 o'clock at night. We get to the masseria, the restaurant is closed, and I was so hungry. And I was like, "Do you guys have any focaccia?" They're like, "What?" I'm like, "Just give me leftover focaccia from like 3 days ago. I don't care. I'm just gonna eat that." And that was like they didn't have a 3-day-old focaccia. I think they had like focaccia that they made that morning. But I just had so much fun and so much enjoyment that just eating that focaccia that's like left over. Like I don't need the restaurant. Give me focaccia and water. I'm good to go. So delicious.
Yeah.
So delicious. Well, Paula, this has been really delicious, really inspiring, really fun. I have a feeling we'll be chatting again soon. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much for having me. I hope someone got inspired by my journey today and my story. And just remember that you are allowed to be your happiest self. That,
Yeah,
you know, that's kind of what I would love someone to take from this today. And Italy is a really beautiful place to discover yourself, I think. I think it's a beautiful country to step into a different vibe completely.
very well said. Paula, if anyone listening to this podcast wants to contact you, get in touch with you, get a cooking class with you, just where can they find you?
So if you have social media, if you look me up on Instagram, I'm at the Tiny Italian. Make sure you put the in front of it. So the Tiny Italian. I also have a website with all my offerings. That's at thetinyitalian.com. So anything to do with me, you can find me under thetinyitalian.com. And yeah, my businesses, I have like, so I help people to, you know, if people want to learn to cook with me, you can learn from anywhere in the world. You don't have to be in Italy or back in the UK. I offer a lot of digital, I have an amazing digital online self-care community called the Self-Love Cooking Club, and it does exactly that. It's a group, a community of women who want to be empowered through cooking and make time to prioritize themselves. And honestly, it's the most fulfilling thing I've ever created in my life, to see women come together and put themselves first. Even if they've had the longest day at work, they still turn up and then they just feel so great. And yeah, I will be offering opportunities for people to come and cook with me in Lecce in 2025. And then I also do like some corporate events. So, you know, if anyone would love for me to share, you know, teach them how to cook a beautiful recipe, but share my theory and my values on empowerment, self-care, self-love, I do that too. So yeah, if you're interested in any of that, you can go and look at thetinyitalian.com. And my Instagram's a vibe. I like to say my Instagram is a total vibe. It's fun. It's fun. It's, you know, whatever mood I'm in that day, but it obviously involves food, the dolce vita, cooking, self-love, it's all of that. So yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. We'll put all your links in the show notes. I know you also have a gift for our listeners, a little download. Can you tell us a little bit about?
Yes. So I put this together and I love it because I know when it comes to cooking, some people get really daunted. If you want to make a change to what you're eating and what you're cooking, but you don't know where to start, I always say your store cupboard, your larder, your pantry is your best friend. So I've compiled together a list of 12 essential Italian self-care ingredients that I believe if you have in your cupboard, you can make lots of different dishes. And so in this guide, you get the list of the ingredients, you get a checklist, but also gives you ideas of like how you can use those ingredients within different dishes. So it's a good starting point. It won't overwhelm you, it'll just give you an idea, because you might look in your cupboard and go, I've got all of that. Actually, I could make something out of dinner tonight with what I've got. And that's essentially what the guide is there to help you do. Just to kind of look at your kitchen, look at your pantry in a different way, look at it with love. It's there to help you, not hinder you. So yeah.
Amazing. We'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. I'm inspired to like shut my computer and go like make some pasta now. The rest of my day and just like go cook, which I love to cook, and I don't cook as much as I wish I could because I'm always like on the go. So either my mom cooks or I buy some stuff. But as you were telling your story, I was remembering how during COVID, when things slowed down, I took baking on as my hobby, which was amazing for my soul. Not so good for my hips, but that's a separate podcast episode. But thank you so
Yeah.
much, Paola. This has been a real pleasure. Grazie mille and arrivederci.
Thank you for having me.